Okay. Thanks a lot. All right, so we are starting off by downloading this zip file and unzipping it, and then we're going to start an Android Studio. And I'm going to start some new empty activity. So I said file, new project, and gave it a name. And once I get a working hello world, then I'm going to copy this code into that hello world. Remember, on these machines, now if you've done it at home and set up Android Studio at home, you probably won't have to do this change 31 to 30 thing that we have to do in this lab. So, but we have to change these 31s to 30s and to get it to run in this lab. So I have to resync it. And then at this stage, I should have a working hello world, and then I'm going to turn it into this program I call greetings. Here. Okay, so this is my previous project. So when I start to run a new project, first I get the previous one pops up, and then here is the new one, and it's just a hello world. Now I'm going to convert that hello world into something else. So I'm going to, I opened up my here's my XML file. I'm going to Control A to copy it all, Control A to highlight it all, Control C to copy it all. I'm going to find under resources and layout and activity main, I'm going to find that file. I'm going to go to the code of the file, and I'm going to paste, Control V, paste all that stuff in. Okay, so again, I gave you a zip file on Canvas. I downloaded and extracted the zip. I opened the activity underscore main in Notepad++. There it is. I copied it all. I highlighted it all. I copied it all. Control A, Control C. I had started a file new project in Android Studio. I had to wait for the Gradle. In the lab, I have to change the 31s to 30 in the Gradle, so I have to resync the Gradle. And then I found under resources layout, activity main, I found the activity, and then I went to code. And so now I have the code of hello world, and I replace it with the XML, the activity underscore main XML layout of this new project I'm pasting in called greetings. Then I'm going to open the code file, also go down to where I unzip those files. I'm right clicking and using Notepad++. And I'm going to not highlight the package. I don't want to copy that first line. I want to copy every other line. And then I'm going to find the main activity of this hello world, which is under Java. There are 3 of these COM things. One says Android test, one says test. I want the first one that doesn't say anything about test. That's where my main activity is. Double click that. Here's my code. I'm going to copy everything I'm gonna not copy, I'm gonna paste in everything except the package. Where's the paste? There's the paste, okay. And then I look for any red. I don't have any red here. And in the XML, I don't have any red. So I'm sort of ready to go. I'm going to save, file save. And then I'm going to stop running that project and then start running the new version. So I'm showing you again something I said 2 days ago. I don't have to close my emulator. I didn't close my emulator. I might have stopped it running, but I did not close it. And so here is my greetings program, and I enter a name, that's an edit text. And then I have these different buttons. So in French, it says bonjour, Mary, and then German and Spanish and English. Okay, so that's what this guy does. We're going to focus on the code, and then later we'll talk about how to make such an interface. I'm going to do that sort of more as a live demo. Okay, but so here's the code. I'm going to open up this code, I think, in Word so that the font is big enough for everybody to see. So let me do a new, and I'm going to take all my code and paste it into Word. Okay. One thing now, I'm going to go over to Android Studio and point out a few things and then come back to here when I'm ready to look at the code in larger font. I don't need that anymore. One thing to note over in Android Studio is that things are collapsible. So here are my imports. I'm going from line 3 to line 12. That's because all my imports are collapsed. But if I want to see them, I hit the plus to see more, I hit the minus to collapse them. So when I copy paste over to Word, I see them all. But when I'm over in Android Studio, I don't see them all, but they're there. They're just hidden. And I can do other collapsing. So here's something all related with clicking the button. I had a button for English, and here's all the stuff about clicking that button, and I can collapse it or expand it. So if you have something working and you don't need to be looking at it and don't need to be having it take up any space, you can collapse it. All right, I have this long comment here. It's a multi-line comment, /*//. I can, if I want you to see the comment, I expand it or I can hide it. Okay. So now let's start looking at some of this code. So there are those imports, and they are collapsed over in Studio, but they're not here. Also, what I want to tell you is that I did not type any of this. It gave me some imports when I started Hello World. It gave me some other imports when I did other things, but I never typed any of the imports. I did not type this main activity. I did not type this on create. I did not type this super on create. I did not type this set content view. Those were all given to me by Android Studio. Okay. first thing I typed was var username :string. I'm declaring a variable, which is going to be the user's name. I'm declaring it of a type string, since that's the :string. And var means that it can change. So I typed Mary and hit a button, then the username was Mary, but I can come back and make it Charlotte or Fred or anything else. So this is telling me that it can change, and this is telling me that it has a type of string. The next line is an important line and comes up a lot. And we have an interface and we have code. So I haven't shown you how to make the interface. That's the second half of today. But my code tells my interface what to do, or what to do when something happens to my interface. And so I need to connect my interface to my Kotlin code. And this is the line that does it. Have you had JavaScript? Most people have had some JavaScript. In JavaScript, this is like document get element by ID. So that you had some page, and that was a document, and you had things on the page with an ID, and then you're accessing them in code. This is the sort of the Kotlin Android version of that. Okay. So here's the ID, ET name. I call it ET. Give it the prefix ET because it's what we call an edit text. Edit text is something that the user can edit. And I usually try to give my IDs a prefix and tells me what kind of thing it is. I don't have to. This ID could be thing 1, and that would be perfectly fine as far as the system's concerned. I like to give it a prefix, ET, telling me it's an edit text, and then the rest of the name trying to figure out what purpose it serves. Oh, it's where the person's going to enter a name. So that's an ID. That's over in the layout, in the design. R.ID, R is the resources. So there's a bunch of resources, and I'm working with the set of IDs in the resources, and I specifically want the thing with an ID of edit or ET name. That's what we mean here. So there are other ways, there are other possible resources or other possible ways of accessing resources. We're accessing a resource based on its ID. And that is, and find view by ID is what we're doing. The things you can see over in the layout are known as views. And we are finding a view based on its ID. Again, that's in JavaScript. That would be like document get element by ID. The thing we are getting is an edit text. So this is sort of a casting. So we're getting a view. This is a generic thing. This gets a view. And then we're specifically saying that thing is an edit text. Which thing? That thing that had an ID of ET name. And then over here is our code version of it. We're calling it, I call it ET name here. These do not have to be the same. This is the ID over in the layout. This is my name over here in Kotlin. I am in the habit of giving them the same, of using the same string for that. I do not have to do that. It's just something I tend to do. And then here it says val. Val is like if you had some Java like final. It means I'm not going to change it. Now it's an edit text. I'm going to, the user can change the text in the edit text. And I will take those changes. That's not what we mean by it's final and can't change. What's final and can't change is I'm making an object that's connecting to this part of the interface. That's what's not going to change. I'm not going to switch over and choose some other view or anything like that. So I'm always going to, once I establish ET name is connected to the thing with an ID of ET name, I'm not going to change that. That's why it's that. Okay. So here's just my long-winded comment saying what I just said. I'm relating the interface to the variable. I give them the same name, but I don't have to. Var means something can change. Val is like final, means it's not going to change. It means that connection we're making between the variable and or the coding quantity and the interface quantity is not going to change. So some property of the thing can change. So the object's not going to change, but some property of the object is still allowed to change. Okay. When you first type this is something that I did type. And when I first type edit text, the Android Studio IDE is going to say, what's that? I don't know what you mean. It's going to put it in red. And then I'm going to come along and put my mouse in that edit text. And I'm going to hit Alt Enter, and I'm going to get a little drop-down list. And at the top of it, it's going to say, would you like me to import the class for an edit text? And you're going to double click and say, yes, please. Okay. So in this program, here are the first two things I typed. And when I put my mouse here and hit Alt Enter, that's how I got it to type this for me. Again, I didn't type these imports. I had the system do it for me, and that's how I got the system to do this particular one for me. I hit Alt Enter. Okay. More connections. That was my connection to the edit text where the user could enter their name. Now I am also coding this is the messages, the hello, Fred, and bonjour, Fred, etc. And I change those because it could be Fred, it could be Ginger, it could be Marianne. Any of those, I need those to be codable because they might change. So it's the same deal as before. I had something called TV English, text view English. So it's not called edit because it's not going to be changed by the user, but it can be changed by code. So TV for text view. And then this is a button that, or sorry, this is the text view associated with English. So I called it TV English. It was a text view. I'm going over to the interface and getting it. And then over here in code, I'm calling it TV English. 4 of them for my different languages. Here are my buttons. Same deal. I had a button with the ID BTN English. It was of the button type. I'm finding it. I call it BTN English encode. Okay, so that is my connecting to my interface. Now I'm ready to write my click event. When I click the button, when I click the English button, I want to do something. There is a standard, what I'll call a boilerplate that is just setting up an on-click function. And then there's the specific stuff we want to do that we must fill in. So this line, set on click listener object view dot on click listener, and the override fun on click v colon view question mark, that's part of the boilerplate. If you're making an on click, this is at least one of the ways it can look. There are like 3 ways it can look. That's what I'm going to show you, the 3 different ways it can look. And this is the sort of the most explicit, the most written out. And this is how it starts, and that's how it ends. And then in between is the specific stuff about the specific stuff we want it to do. Okay. So this, the complicated part is almost always the same for a button click. I mean, you have your choice of 3 versions, but you pick the version you like. You have some, again, I'm never going to make you code from absolute scratch. You're always going to have something to copy from. So you're going to sort of copy this and change it from button English to button submit or whatever button you have. So this part is almost always the same, except maybe the name of the button changes, and it always ends the same. And then here, this is the stuff that changes because I want to do something different every time. I want to get the username. This is me getting the username. So I went to et name. That's now, this is the code version. I have my code version that's related to my interface. I'm getting the text out of the box. Text and string is not quite the same thing, so I have to convert it to a string and then assign that to the username variable. I'm going to display my text with the word hello next to it. So this is me displaying my message of hello with that username. I decided to, once I clicked the button, I decided to make it this one magenta, because I'm weird like that. So I am V. So the V is the argument of the on click. And I am setting its background color to magenta. So the button turned this magenta. And then it is clickable false. It means you can't click it anymore. Okay, so those are the 4 things I am doing. I'm getting the name, I'm making a message with the name, I'm changing the button to a different color, and I'm making it so you can't click it anymore. Okay, what other weird things do I want to show you? This says override. It means when I do the set on click, there's a method I'm responsible for. It's the on click method, and I have to override it. So they give me one that does nothing and is stupid and does nothing, but it's my job to say what I want to do, so I have to override it. Fun just stands for function. Instead of making you spell out function and giving you a good opportunity to misspell function, they just go with fun because writing functions is fun. And then there is the name of the method you must overwrite, which is the on click, and there's the argument of the button, which is the view, which has a question mark. And that question mark and these question marks are related. And that means that it is nullable. It can be made null. So you're not going to be able to click on the button if it's null, but you might click on the button and then have some code to get rid of the button. So the button can be sort of taken away and made null. And so I didn't want to do that. It's just the way it's set up. They're trying to figure out all these different possible scenarios. So they said this V may be null. And then I have to say, this question mark is saying, I'm going to make the button magenta if there's a button. That's what the question mark means. If there is a button, make it magenta. If there is a button, make it is clickable property false, so I can't click it. Questions? There's more questions in the morning. There's somebody very questiony in the morning, which is good and bad. Takes more time, but it means at least one person's paying attention and wants to know stuff. Okay, so that's my comment on the nullable. All right. Okay, that's version 1 of a click method. It had override, it had the word override, it had fun for function, it had explicitly, there was a function called onClick that we were overriding. That function had an argument v. Maybe you have a question. All right. Now we're going to, in French, we're going to get rid of the override. It's going to be implied. We're going to get rid of the word fun for function. It's going to be implied. There's only one method that we have to write, which is the onClick. So if there's only one function, it's implied, then it's the onClick. So that will be implied. We're going to leave the argument there. So we're going to leave the argument of the function. We're not going to have explicitly write the function, but we're going to write the argument of the function, and we're going to leave that explicitly there. So we're going to have, it's weird, we're taking away the name of the function, we're taking away the word function itself, we're taking away the name of the function, but we're still going to have the argument of the function. And the way we distinguish the argument of the function from what the function does is this arrow. So you say the arrow, and then you have a bunch of stuff. And that arrow separates the argument of the function from the block of the function. What's that? I'm not sure. I'd have to look up the definition of lambda to be exactly sure. Some of the terms used is like anonymous function, because we're not naming our function. Because we didn't name our function before, it was named for us by the class we inherited. But one name that gets thrown in here is arrow function. That I know simple terms like arrow function because there's an arrow with a function. Lambda sort of above my pay grade, but I can look it up if you're really interested. Yeah. So we still have set onClick listener. We need that, but we threw away override. We threw away function. We threw away onClick. We kept the argument and then had an arrow. And then here's the stuff we had before, except I'm doing French instead of English. And it seems like I could get away without the question marks. Before, they gave me, I was copying this boilerplate, and in the copying, it had the question marks, so I needed the corresponding question marks. But down here, when I introduced the V here, I didn't have any question marks, so I didn't need any here. And here, I'm just using, instead of using a named color, I'm switching to an RGB color. Otherwise, the sort of same idea. I'm going to, so I got rid of, in French, my French button, I got rid of override. I got rid of function. I got rid of on click, but I kept the argument. In now my German button, I'm going to get rid of the argument. So now in the German version, you just go straight in, set on click listener, and you just go straight into your stuff. It looks like, oh, you're writing this function. You're writing this set on click listener. Actually, no, you're writing code in a method of set on click listener. But so this is more like you're setting up a class for listening for clicks, and then there's a method that you need, but it's all implied that method, you're not writing anything explicit about the method. You're just, you have to do it, so you just start doing it. But I don't have any reference to the argument, and the argument was the button that I clicked, and I want to change the different buttons, different colors, so I need to know which button I clicked. And now the button is referred to by the keyword fit. It's different. It's like the word this, but not quite the same as the word this. And Kotlin has some thises. And this is wonderful when it works and terrible when it doesn't work. And so I spend half my life trying to figure out when this will and won't work. But here it's not this, but it. And so whatever I was doing above with V, I am now doing with it. But I just take stuff. I've just taken things away. So it's more implied here. Again, this is the more modern style. The other way to write Android is in Java, and Java is an older fashioned language, and it wouldn't let you sort of do most of these things. You would be stuck up with the very first, more explicit version. Okay. There's Spanish is pretty much the same as German. So now here's my interfacing thing. If they change the name, I want to erase the all the greetings. If they write Greg and then they decide to go back in and write Gregory, I don't want it saying Greg. I'd rather them cleared out than wrong. So this is an add text change listener. So this is the ET name. This is where the person can write. This is the event for changing the text. This is more complicated than clicking a button. When you type, there are at least 3 things they want you to worry about. What to do just before you start to type. What to do while you're typing. What to do when you're done typing. All I want to do is like erase something, and I want to erase something while they're typing. So I'm responsible for 3 methods, before, during, and after, even if I don't want to do anything. I don't want to do anything after. I don't want to do anything before. I'm only interested in during. I still have to have them, even if I don't write any code for them. So here's the after. It's curly. It doesn't do anything, but I have to have it. Here's the before. And there's a curly. It doesn't do anything. And then I decided to put my stuff in the on text change event. So not the before, not the after, but on the change event. That's where I decided to write it. You can experiment so long as it works. And then I am clearing out, setting the text to a bunch of dashes of all of the answers: TV English, TV French, TV German, TV Spanish. I'm changing the buttons, the color of the buttons, all back to gray. and I'm making them clickable again. So what do I have? Here's Mary. Let me make it Mary Ann. Okay. Cleared out the message and made it dashes. Turned the buttons back to gray and made them clickable again. So that is, so you need a button. You're going to have, you're doing, remember, security questions. So you're going to have, I did a bunch of, I did one edit text and a bunch of buttons. You're kind of reversing that situation. You're going to have a bunch of edit texts and one button or two buttons because you're going to have it clear. All right. I'm going to switch over to from code to layout. Any code questions? All right. And here, here. That was the long one. These ones go faster. I have a constraint layout as a PowerPoint. That is for you to look at on your own if you need to refer back. I'm just going to do it as live demo. So I'm going to, that's my phone, that's my, okay, I'm going to make a hello world. And what am I going to call it? A layout demo B, in case I did one before. So I'm making a hello world, a default program, a hello world. It's synced. Let me quick do the Gradle change again. If you're on your own computer, you probably can skip this step. It's just think about what IT has installed on these computers, some incompatibility, so I have to go back a step. And I should have at this stage a working hello world. And there's a hello world. Okay. Now I want to play with the layout. So the layout is in resources, layout, activity main. I have a constraint layout. So my container is called the constraint layout. And I have in there a text view. I can also look at it in code. Here is my constraint layout. It's a container. It has an open constraint layout and a closed constraint layout. And then there is the text view. You've got something like when I said, have you seen JavaScript that made web pages? Most people seem to nod or say yes. And so you have to get used. This is XML, which is like HTML. And one of the problems with HTML is you have to know which things have an open and a close and which things are like a standalone, a singleton. So the constraint layer is an open and a close, and the text view is a singleton. Okay. I'm going to go back to design. So I have a text view. Here's the constraints. These in design, these circles are filled in blue, and then you get these sort of zigzaggy line up to the top and to the sides. Those are the constraints. So this text view is constrained. Over in code, you have attributes that are constraint attributes. Okay. I'm going to get rid of this label. I'm going to get rid of this text view. Delete. I deleted a constraint. I want to delete the whole thing. Delete the whole thing. Okay. I'm going to add a new text view. That is when I add a new text view. So I come to this palette over here and I'm going to drag a text view. That text view that I just dragged over is not constrained. I like to give it an ID right away. So I'm going to call it TV name. I'm going to have a place for the person to enter their name. It says, do I want to refactor? I'll say yes. The circles in design are white or empty, if you will. And so this is not constrained. I don't need 4 constraints, but I need 2 constraints. I need a horizontal constraint and I need a vertical constraint. I usually constrain each view. I usually constrain its top and its left. That is my standard approach. It doesn't have to be, but you do, it will be confused and give you this red. And it's also red over in code. Here's some squiggly red here. And it's telling you that it's not properly constrained. It wants at least 1 horizontal and 1 vertical constraint. So I'm going to do it in design. I'm going to drag, click on this and drag from here up to the top. I don't want to be that close. That's a little too close to the top for me. So I'm going to use this little drop down and say 24. That gives me 24 units of space before the top. Then I'm going to constrain its left the same way. Click on this little bubble and drag over. And I also want that to be 24. Okay. And then I want the text of this text view to say name and maybe a colon space. And maybe maybe I'll look at all the attributes of this text view and find the text size and make it a little bit bigger. Let's see it. There it is, text size. It's telling me 14. I'll choose, I don't know. So now I have constrained my text view. I've constrained it to its container, which is the constraint layout. So the layout was the overall container. I added a text view. It was unconstrained. Now I have constrained it. At least 1 vertical, at least 1 horizontal. For me, sort of top and left. If I look at it in code, it's added these attributes. I gave it an ID. I gave it a name. I gave it a text size. I said how far I wanted to be. I said what my margins were. Those are those 24s. And then I said how it was constrained. The top was constrained to the parent, which is the container. And the start, which is another word for the left, was constrained to the parent. I'm going to add another text. This time I'm going to add a plain text. This is an edit text that allows you to write just plain text in it. And then there are variations. Oh, here's one that understands about email. And here's one that understands about numbers. But I'm just going to do plain text. I'm going to drag it down here to start. Now, if you've played with other designers in your life, you would say like, oh, if I ran this program at this stage, that's where that thing would be. It would, where I see it is where it would be, and that would be incorrect for a constraint view. So I stopped the previous thing. I'm running this new thing. There's my old French thing showing up. Here is the name on top of the name. It's not where I put it in design because I control where it is in design based on the constraints. The constraint layout, which is the default layout that it gives you, is not a what you see is what you get kind of a design. I have to constrain it. I'm going to constrain its top to the top. I'm going to constrain its left to the right of that. You can't see that. I'm going to blow it up. I'm going to zoom in. All right. So I'm going to give myself shrink a little bit. Oh, what I did. Okay. I want to give myself those 24s. Okay. And then I want to, again, blow it up a little bit. So you can see here, there, now you can sort of see it. That little squiggly here is the edit text. It has its left constrained to the right of the text view. And they both have the top. And then I want to call this thing up here. I want to call its ID. I want to say that it's an ET, an edit text for the name. And I'm going to refactor, and then I'm going to just, where it says name, I'm going to take it out. So now I'm ready to do the name. Now if I save and run, stop the old one, start the new one. Back to French. Now it's constrained in the way I want it to be constrained. It looks the way I want it to look. I'm going to add one more thing. I'm going to add another text view, and then I'm going to call it quits. This one's going to be for entering an email, so I'm going to call it text view email. Refactor, yes. I'm going to, its text is going to say email with a colon maybe. And then I wanted to change its font size. Text size, there it was. What did I have that? I made it 24, I think. And then I want to constrain it. I'm going to constrain its left to the container with that 24 that I like. I'm going to constrain its top. This thing takes a little more space vertically than does this, so I'm going to constrain its top to this. Not something you absolutely have to do, it's just what I tend to do. And give it my famous 24. So everybody, every view should have a horizontal label or horizontal constraint and a vertical constraint. All right. Blabbering on longer than usual again. All right. I swear once I get going, I only talk about half the time. All right. So that is a constraint layout. one more thing to show you because it's in the project, because it's in the lab. This YouTube is just on constraint layout again. This is a PowerPoint that just does what I just sort of live demoed. I'm going to show you about a toast and a log. And then call it quits and let you do some work. Okay. So I'm going to show you how to do a toast and a log. A toast is how you might interact with a user, showing them sort of some things along the way or send them a little message. And log is sort of a behind the scenes thing for debugging. But I also use toasts for debugging because I'm not a very good debugger. Okay. So the code for a log is log.d, and then there are two arguments. And one is just a tag for your log that helps you find it. And then there's some message of the log. And so if you were debugging, you might use the second, the message, to say, here's the value of that variable at this stage or something like that. So you might use a log to see how you're progressing. You might just say this far, and that tells you that you got that far in your code, or you might have the value of a parameter, but it's a debugging method. Toast is like an alert in JavaScript. It pops something up and gives the user an alert. It has 3 arguments. It has 3 arguments. One of them is just this, which is, I think, a context. And again, when this works, it's nice and easy. And when this doesn't work, it's hell, but this is a simple thing. So right now it worked. Hello toast is the message. So there was the context in which you want the message to pop up, the message that you want to pop up. And again, this is where you might concatenate some value or something. And then the third argument is how long you want it to show. And then you always have to say .show, or it doesn't show if you don't say .show. Okay. When I pasted that in, again, in that slideshow, I have the text. You can copy the text. When I copied the text, the log was red, the toast was red. That means I need to import those classes. So I put the mouse over log, I hit Alt-Enter, it imports log for me. Do the same thing for toast, it imports it for me. So here I am with my cursor in the word log, and it's telling me, giving me this little tip of Alt-Enter. Here's when I hit Alt-Enter, it gives me one of the options is to import. That's the one I wanted, so I click or double click that one. And then again, imports tend to be collapsed, so you don't see what it did, but if you expand the imports, you'll see it added log and toast. The effect of the toast is when you're running your phone, it gives you this little pop-up message. It's a temporary thing. So you see it, it goes away relatively quickly. You can do a fancier toast and control more about where it goes, but this is just the simplest toast. And again, I tend to use it for some debugging, so I don't worry about being fancy. I just want to sort of see how far I got and things like that. And then the log is less disruptive to the user, but a little bit, so more about behind the scenes coding, but a little also harder for you to find, but it's under this run tab. At least that's one place to look for it, in this run tab. And then you look for the tag. And then if you get really fancy, it becomes searchable. So you can search on the tag and just only get, your tags for this particular program and sort of take out all the other messages. But those are 2 debugging methods. that you're supposed to throw into your security question lab, which is due in a week. Okay. So I haven't given you much time to work, but I hope I have shown you how to do everything you need to do. All right, I'm gonna hang out. I'm gonna stop record. Anybody have a question for the recording? Stop the recording.